Welcome back to my channel. With every movement, the scratchy wool blanket is thin and provides little comfort against the bitter winter air coming through the gaps in the window frame. Unlike your warm, comfortable bed right now, this one offers no real rest. Your back aches from the uneven surface. The straw pokes through in places, jabbing your side. And there's a distinctive musty smell rising from the mattress itself, a mixture of stale sweat, coal dust, and the distinctive scent of bodies. The room itself is tiny, perhaps 10 feet by 8 feet. The ceiling is low, stained yellow-brown from years of cold smoke. The single window is mel, its glass cloudy and cracked in one corner. A sheet has been nailed around the frame in a futile attempt to keep out drafts. The walls are bare brick, no insulation, no wallpaper, just cold, damp stone that sometimes glistens with moisture when the weather is particularly bad. This house is what Victorians called a back-to-back. Essentially, a house built sharing a rear wall to save on construction costs. There are just 2 rooms downstairs and 2 upstairs for your entire family of 8. No backyard, no garden, just a narrow street out front, shared with dozens of identical houses crammed together. A house is crammed together. A hacking cough from the next bed breaks the pre-dawn silence. That's your father. He's worked in the cotton mill for 20 years, and his lungs are heavy with lint and coal dust. He coughs most mornings now, sometimes bringing up dark phlegm, but he'll still go to work today. He has no choice. You hear your mother stirring downstairs. She's been up for half an hour already, coaxing the fire back to life. The smell of coal smoke begins to filter up through the floorboards. At least there will be a little warmth before heading out. Tomato, get up. The factory bell will be ringing soon, and you can't be late. The overseer docks half a day's wages for tardiness, and your family needs every penny. The wooden floor is ice cold against your bare feet as you slip out from under the blanket. Your siblings stir, but don't wake fully. The youngest 2 don't work yet. They're only 4 and 6. But your 12-year-old brother will be up soon to join you at the mill. First things first, the morning wash, not a shower or bath. Those are luxuries you might experience once or twice a year, if that. No, it's time for this stand-up wash. The daily ritual of every Victorian who cared about cleanliness. In the corner of the room sits a plain ceramic washstand with a chipped basin and a pitcher of water. That water was carried up from the street pump yesterday evening and now has a thin film of ice forming on top. You break it with your finger, the sharp cold making you westy. Pour a little of this frigid water into the basin, just enough to dampen your flannel cloth, a small square of worn woolen fabric that serves as your washcloth. No fancy soaps here, just a small hard lump of brown soap made from fat and lye. It doesn't lather well in cold water, leaving a slightly greasy film on your skin. You don't strip. That would be madness in this cold. Instead, you wash in sections, exposing only small portions of your body at a time. Face first, then neck, then one arm, tucked back into your nightclothes before washing the other. Your chest, your back, with some awkward reaching. Lastly, your feet, which are already filthy from the soot-covered floor. The water in the basin quickly turns gray-black from the coal dust that settles on everything in this industrial city. Coal, smoke from thousands of chimneys coats every surface inside and out. It's in your hair, under your fingernails, embedded in the pores of your skin. This kind of washing is exactly why Victorians had a distinctive tide mark around their necks. Clean faces from daily washing, but bodies that rarely saw soap and water. The wealthy might have hot water brought up by servants, but for working families, like yours, hot water is a rare luxury saved for laundry day. Speaking of clothes, time to get dressed. You pull on your clothes from yesterday. They're not exactly fresh, but they'll do for another day or 2 before needing a wash. Laundry is a major undertaking that happens perhaps once every week or in winter when drying clothes is nearly impossible. Start with your undergarments. For a girl, a simple cotton chemise and drawers. For a boy, just long cotton underdrawers. Then comes the first proper layer. A cotton shirt for boys or a simple cotton bodice for girls, both are patched in multiple places, the original fabric barely visible among their pairs. Next, several more layers, a woolen petticoat for girls or flannel undershirt for boys. Then your outer clothes, a simple wool dress for girls, perhaps dyed a dark color to hide the inevitable stains. For boys, woolen trousers held up with suspenders, and perhaps a waistcoat if you're lucky. No central heating means Victorians dressed in layers, lots of them. Even the poorest families might wear 5 or 6 layers of clothing year-round. In summer, these would be lighter cotton, in winter heavy wool. The materials might be rough and scratchy against your skin, but they trap warmth effectively. Your clothes have likely been mended dozens of times. Holes patched, seams reinforced, hems let down as you grow. Nothing is wasted. When clothes become truly unwearable, they're cut down to make clothes for younger siblings or used as rags. Your good outfit is saved for Sundays only, carefully brushed and stored away between wearings. The smell of your clothing would show sensibilities, a mixture of body odor, coal smoke, industrial fumes, and the general miasma of Victorian urban life is embedded in every fiber, but you'dn't notice it. Everyone smells this way, it's just how life is. Downstairs, your mother has the fire going properly now. The kitchen is the only room that ever gets truly warm, and even that's relative. It's small, perhaps 10 feet square with a stone floor and a cast-iron range built into the chimney breast. This serves as both cooking stove and heating for the entire house. The furniture is sparse and functional. A rough wooden table with mismatched chairs, a dresser holding the family's few dishes and cooking implements, perhaps a rocking chair near the fire where your mother sews in the evenings. The walls might have a few cheap prints, maybe a religious scene or a portrait of the Queen, but are otherwise bare. Hurry now, your mother says, pushing a chippered enamel mug of tea into your hands. Your father's already gone ahead. Breakfast, simple, a slice of bread, maybe with a scraping of dripping congealed fat saved from meat cooking. If you're lucky, the bread is dense and heavy, not the light, fluffy loaves we know today. It's filling though, which is what matters when you're facing a 12-hour workday. The tea is weak. The leaf shave been used several times already and will be used again before being discarded. There's a small amount of milk in it, watery and slightly sour. Sugar is a luxury reserved for if you lived in the north of England, you might have porridge instead. Oatmeal cooked with water and a pinch of salt. In some parts of the country, especially Ireland and the northern counties, potatoes might form the basis of this morning meal. Your 12-year-old brother joins you, blurred and moving slowly. He's been working in the mill for 3 years already, since he was 9. The 1833 Factory Act made it illegal for children under Nene to work in textile factories, but placed no restrictions on other industries. Children as young as 5 or 6 still worked in many places. Mines, chimneys, weeping, street selling. Mind, you're not late. Your mother reminds you both, and take care with that new machine. Mrs. Davis's boy lost 2 fingers last month. Factory accidents were common and devastating with no safety regulations and dangerous unguarded machinery. Injuries were an everyday occurrence. Crushed limbs, severed fingers, scalping when hair got caught in machinery, or occupational hazards. For the Victorian worker, there was no compensation, no sick pay. If you couldn't work, you didn't get paid. Outside, the street is already busy despite the early hour. The narrow cobbled lane between the rows of back-to-back houses is shared by everyone. Children play, women hang what laundry they can on lines strung between buildings. Men smoke pipes in doorways. On their rare days off, the air is thick with cold smoke. Manchester, like all industrial cities, exists under a perpetual grey pall. On bad days, smoke mixes with fog to create the infamous pea soupers, smog so thick you can barely see your hand in front of your face. The smell is acrid and inescapable, burning your nose and throat underfoot. The street is filthy. Human waste, animal dung, food scraps, industrial discharge, all mix in the gutters that run down the center of the street. In many poor areas, proper sewage systems don't exist yet. Instead, waste flows in open channels to the nearest river, which itself becomes little more than an open sewer. Deprives outdoor toilets are located at the end of the street. They're shared among several families. Simple wooden structures over deep pits. The smell is appalling, especially in summer. Disease spreads easily in these conditions. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery. Victorian cities were breeding grounds for illness. As you make your way through streets toward the looming factory buildings, you pass other workers heading the same way. Men with cloth caps pulled low, women with shawls wrapped tightly around their shoulders, children stumbling along, half asleep, all moving with the same purpose, torch work before the bell rings. The factories dominate the skyline, massive brick buildings with tall chimneys belching black smoke. The cotton mills of Manchester, the ironworks of Birmingham, the shipyards of Glasgow. These were the engines of Victorian industry, and they consumed human lives as readily as they consumed coal. Your stomach tightens as you approach the gates. Another day of deafening noise, choking dust, dangaroos, machinery, and watchful overseers. 12 hours of monotonous, exhausting work for pennies a day. But you go in. Everyone does. This is life for the ordinary Victorian. This is the reality behind the lace and finery of the period dramas. This is how most people lived during the height of the British Empire. And as difficult as it seems, this is actually an improvement over what came before. At least now younger children are protected from factory work. At least now there are some limits on working hours. At least now reform is beginning to happen. The factory bell rings, calling workers to their stations. You hurry through the gates, your brother at your side. The massive doors swing open, belching hot air and the cacophony of machinery. Another day begins in Victorian England that the roar of the machines swallows you whole as you step inside. The floor vibrates beneath your feet, a constant tremor that you feel in your bones after years of working here. The air is thick with cotton fibers that dance in shafts of weak light coming through the high windows. These same fibers will edge in your lungs over time, causing the persistent cough so common among textile workers. Hundreds of power looms stretch in rows as far as you can see, each one tended by a worker, many of them women and children. The noise, is so overwhelming that workers develop a form of sign language to communicate on the factory floor. After years here, many textile workers suffer hearing loss. You make your way to your assigned station, your fingers already working automatically, preparing for the familiar motions they'll repeat thousands of times today. The overseer watches from his elevated platform, ready to note any slacking or mistakes. Talking is discouraged, breaks are few. The factory floor stretches before you like an endless mechanical wilderness. Hundreds of looms clatter in synchrony, each vibration traveling through the floorboards and up into your body. The sound isn't just heard, it's felt. A physical presence, it pounds against your eardrums and resonates in your chest cavity with every beat of your heart. This isn't just noise, it's a full sensory assault. The cotton fibers suspended in the air catch the weak morning light filtering through the high windows. They danced Answell with every movement, creating ghostly patterns that would be beautiful if they weren't slowly killing everyone will breathe them in. Cotton lung, they call it. After 10 years here, workers cow up fleck with cotton and blood. You make your way to your assigned position, weaving between the massive iron machines. Each weighs several tons, bolted directly to the wooden floor. There are no safety guards, no emergency stops, just raw mechanical power harnessed with minimal concern for the humans who tend them. The overseer spots you from his elevated platform and checks his pocket watch. You've arrived with barely a minute to spare. He makes a note in his ledger but says nothing. You've avoided a fine tow day, barely. The machines never stop. Not for 12 hours, not for accidents, not for anything but the most catastrophic mechanical failures. Production quotas must be met. The British Empire's insatiable appetite for textiles drives these mills day and night, and human considerations are secondary to output. Your job is simple but dangerous. As a peer, you watch for broken threads, untee them back together to keep the looms running smoothly. Requires quick fingers, sharp eyes, and a willingness to reach into moving machinery hundreds of times a day. Most pieces are children or women. Their smaller hands make the work easier, and their lower wages make them attractive to mill owners. Your younger brother works as a scavenger, an even more dangerous position. His job is to crawl beneath the still running machines, sweeping up fallen cotton fibers. The floor under the looms is a nightmare landscape of spinning drive belts, exposed gears, and moving parts that can catch clothing, hair, or limbs in an instant. Children as young as 5. This task, their small body is ideal for navigating the cramped spaces. You watch him duck beneath a loom, his thin body almost disappearing in the mechanical underworld. Your heart clenches momentarily as it does every time he vanishes from sight. Not every child comes back out. You knew a girl, Aunt Mary, who was scalped when her hair caught in an unguarded drive belt. She survived somehow, though her face was pulled so badly out of shape she couldn't close her eyes. She still works in the spinning room. What choice did she have? Unlike your soft bed at home, now there's nowhere to rest here. Standing for 12 hours straight is mandatory. Sitting down even for a moment results in fines or dismissal. Your legs ache constantly, developing the characteristic factory leg, swollen ankles, and varicose veins from prolonged standing on hard floors. Many older workers develop permanently deferred feet and spines. The air grows hotter as the day. Machinery generates enormous heat and ventilation is poor. In summer, temperatures on the factory floor can reach over 90. Workers sometimes faint from the combination of heat, standing, and poor air quality. If you collapse, you're dragged aside until you recover, then expected to resume your position. Your wages are docked for lost time. Cotton isn't the only industry with brutal conditions. In Thamnines of northern England and Wales, children as young as 4 work as trappers, sitting alone in pitch-black tunnels for 12 hours a day, opening and closing ventilation doors when they hear carts approaching. Others work as hurriers, dragging heavy carts of coal through tunnels too small for adults to navigate comfortably. And then there are the chimney sweeps, perhaps the most pitiful of Victorian child workers. Boys as young as 3 are sent up narrow chimney flue to clean out the accumulated soot and creosote. Many become stuck, some suffocate, others develop horrific cancers from the constant exposure to carcinogens. Their master sweeps often starve them to keep them small enough to fit in the chimneys for as long as possible. But here in Theatre-style mill, you've learned to cope with your particular brand of industrial misery. Your fingers move automatically, finding and repairing broken threads with practiced precision. Your eyes constantly scan your assigned looms, watching for problems before they escalate. Your body sways slightly with the rhythm of the machines, a subconscious adaptation that reduces fatigue. There's a sudden commotion 3 looms down. A woman has caught her apron in the machinery. She's being pulled in, her screams barely audible above the mechanical den. 2 male workers rush to help, trying to free her without stopping the loom because stopping production without authorization means immediate dismissal. They manage to tear the apron, releasing her just before her body would have been crushed. She collapses, shaking but alive. The overseer arrives, surveys the scene with cold eyes, makes another note in his ledger. The woman will be fined for damaging materials and disrupting production. She also loses today's wages since she can no longer work her station. This is justice in the Victorian factory. A bell rings, signaling the breakfast break. The machines don't stop, but the workers are permitted 15 minutes to eat the food they've brought from home. You pull a small bundle from your pocket, another piece of bread, perhaps with a scraping of dripping if your mother managed to save some. A small piece of cheese if you're exceptionally lucky. You find your brother and share your mega meal with him. His face is stir with dirt and cotton dust, his eyes reddened, irritated. He doesn't complain. No one does. This is simply life as you know it. The overseer's whistle blows all too soon. Break over. Back to work. Morning turns to afternoon with agonizing slowness. The mill's large windows provide some sense of time, though they're so coated with grime and cotton fiber that the quality of light is always diffused and gray. Your lower back throbs from standing. Your fingers are raw from the constant handling of rough threads. Your throat burns from the cotton-laden air. The noise is so constant that it becomes almost hypnotic. Workers sometimes in error-trance-like state, their minds drifting away while their hands continue their tasks automatically. It's a small psychological mercy in an otherwise merciless environment. You think of how different this is from the countryside where your grandparents lived. Their work followed the rhythms of nature. Hard physical labor certainly, but varied outdoors and with natural breaks built into the agricultural calendar. Factory work is relentless, unchanging, and divorced from natural cycles. The same motions, the same noise, the same environment, day after day, year after year. This distinction between rural and industrial work is one of the great psychological shifts of the Victorian era. Humans who had evolved to work with natural world were suddenly thrust into mechanized environments that ran counter to their biological rhythms. The mental toll was as significant as the physical. You are jolted from your thoughts by the afternoon bell, not a break, a shift change. The night workers begging arriving, pale figures who rarely see full daylight. They'll operate the same machines until morning, sleeping during the day in the same beds you and your family occupy at night. This hotbedding is common in overcrowded industrial areas. One bed service multiple workers who use it in shifts. You've done night shifts before. They pay slightly better but disrupt your body even more severely. The factory's sorry area at night. The mechanical monsters casting long shadows in the gap. Groom accidents are more common during night shifts. Fatigue, clouding judgments and slowing reactions. As you prepare to leave your station, you check your clothing. Factory workers develop the habit of patting themselves down before moving away from machinery. A subconscious safety check for loose threads that might catch and drag them into the mechanisms. It's a habit that stays with mill workers for life, even years after they've left the industry. The end of shift bell finally rings. 12 hours after you arrived, you're permitted to leave. Your body aches in ways that sleep will never fully repair. Cumulative fatigue is the constant companion of the Victorian worker, even on your day off. Sunday for most, you never quite recover before the cycle begins again on Monday morning. Outside, the winter day is already fading into dusk. You've seen precious little sunlight in through the factory gates before dawn. Out after the sun has begun to set during December and January. Many factory workers don't see daylight at all for weeks at a time. The streets are momentarily flooded with workers as shifts change. A river of humanity, all bearing the same marks of factory life. The characteristic stoop, the hollow cow, the premature aging. Men and women in their 30s often look 60, their bodies broken by industrial labor. You find your brother in the crowd, his form easily overlooked among the adults. He's moving slowly, exhaustion evident in every step. You take his hand, a small kindness in a world that offers few, and begin the walk home. The air outside is cool relief after the stifling heat of the mill. Even the smoke-filled Manchester atmosphere feels fresh by comparison. Your lungs though the respite is temporary. Tomorrow brings another 12 hours in the cotton-choked air. As you walk, you pass younger children returning from other forms of work. Street sellers who've spent the day hawking matches, flowers, or newspapers. Crossing sweepers who clear paths through the horse manure and garbage for pennies from passing gentlefolk. Mudlarks who scavenge in the filthy river for anything of value that might be sold. Child labor is the foundation upon which Victorian prosperity is built, the empire that stretches across a quarter of the globe. The wealth that flows into British banks. The luxurious slices of the upper classes. All rest upon the bent backs and broken health of children as young as 3 or 4. Yet, change is coming, albeit slow. The Factory Acts of 1833 and 1844 have begun to place limits on child labor, though enforcement is spotty and many industries remain unregulated. The 1833 Act prohibited the employment of children under 9 in textile factories and limited the working hours of those aged 913 to 8 hours daily. Children 13-18 were permitted to work only 12 hours a day. These reforms, modest by modern standards, were fiercely opposed by many factory owners who argued that such restrictions would ruin British industry. They claimed that children were better off working and running wild in the streets, and that factory discipline built character. Some even suggested that children's smaller, more nimble fingers were naturally suited to industrial work. Even some working-class families resisted these reforms, not from cruelty but from economic necessity. In a world without social safety nets, a family's survival often depended on every member contributing to the household income. Removing children from the workforce, however humanely intended, could push already precarious families into destitution. This uncomfortable reality complicates the narrative of Victorian child labor. The moral outrage is justified, but the economic realities that drove families to send their youngest members to work must also be acknowledged. Reform required not just factory regulations, but broader social changes that would allow families to survive on adult wages alone. As you near home, you pass the imposing brick edifice of the local workhouse. It looms over the neighborhood like a threat, a reminder of what awaits those who cannot support themselves. Inside its walls, families are separated, heads are shaved, uniforms are worn, and hard labor is performed in exchange for the barest sustenance. The 1834 Poor Law Amendment Act established this system, deliberately making workhouses as unpleasant as possible to discourage their use. The principle of less eligibility ensured that conditions inside were worse than those of the lowest paid worker outside. Only the truly desperate would choose a workhouse over any other option. You quicken your pace as you pass it. Both you and your brother know that one serious accident, one extended illness, one economic downturn could land your family behind those dreaded wells. It's the Victorian worker's greatest fear, not death, but the workhouse. The streets grow narrower and more crowded as you near your neighborhood. The buildings lean toward each other over the cobblestones, blocking what little remains of the daylight. The air grows thicker with the smells of cooking waste and unwashed bodies. This is home, not comfortable by any standard, but familiar. You pass Mr. Jenkins the coster, selling the last of his vegetables from a small handcart. He gives you a nod of recognition. His prices drop at the end of the day. Anything unsold will rot overnight. You stop to purchase a few slightly wilted greens and a potato with the few pennies you have kept from your wages. It will supplement tonight's meager meal. Most of your earnings go directly to your parents for rent and household expenses. Perhaps a penny or two might be yours to keep. A fortune from a child's perspective, enough for small luxuries like a piece of hard candy or admission to a magic lantern show on rare occasions. The economy of Victorian Brighton operates on pennies for the working class. A factory child might earn 3 or 4 shillings a week, perhaps 48 pennies for 72 hours of labor. From this mess come food, shelter, clothing, and fuel. Saving is nearly impossible, which my injury or illness can rapidly lead to catastrophe. You turn down your street, the familiarity of its sights and sounds oddly comforting. After the mechanical minute of the factory, Mrs. O'Brien is hanging washing on a line strung between buildings. The Dawson children are playing with a hoop and stick in the narrow lane. Old Mr. Simmons sits by his door, smoking his pipe, his rheumatism too painful for him, if it's work anymore. His children support him, keeping him from the workhouse through their combined wages. This is community, the invisible support and work that makes survival possible in Victorian working-class neighborhoods. Neighbors watch each other's children share what little they have in times of crisis and offer the emotional sustenance that makes their difficult lives bearable. Without this mutual aid, far more would fall into destitution. You reach your door, pushing it open, to find the welcome warmth of the kitchen. Your mother is already preparing the evening meal, making a thin soup from yesterday's beef bone, the vegetables you've just purchased, and a handful of barley. It will be stretched to feed a late family members with perhaps a little left for tomorrow's breakfast. Your father sits by the fire, his face gray with exhaustion. He's been coughing more today, he tells your mother. Not enough to stay home. The family can't afford to lose his wages, but enough to tuberculosis, pneumonia, bronchitis, all are common among factory workers and all can be deadly. You take off your outer clothes, hanging them carefully by the fire to air out overnight. The cotton dust clings to everything, embedding itself in the fibrous. Your mother will brush your clothes vigorously before you put them on again tomorrow, removing as much off the lint as possible. Still, over time, the cotton becomes part of the fabric itself, just as it becomes part of your lungs. Your younger siblings return from their day at the dame school, a cheap form of education where an older woman teaches basic reading and perhaps some simple arithmetic to neighborhood children for a few pennies a week. It's all the education most working-class children will ever receive, and even this is a luxury many families cannot afford. The 1870 Education Act will eventually establish a framework for universal elementary education in Britain, but for now schooling remains piecemeal and interrupted by work responsibilities. Many children attend school only until they're old enough to contribute significantly to the family income. Usually by age 8 or 9, as you help prepare the evening meal, your muscles aching from the day's labor, you listen to your younger siblings chatter about their day. Their innocence is both heartbreaking and precious. They don't understand that their futures are largely predetermined by the circumstances of their birth. They don't feel the weight of the industrial machine that will soon claim them as it has claimed you. This is the reality of working-class Victorian childhood. Brief, often brutal, and ended far too soon. Yet, even within these harsh constraints, children find moments of joy, connection, and play. Humanity persists stubbornly in the face of grinding poverty and exploitation. The family gathers around the table as your mother serves the soup, carefully ensuring each bowl has a fair share of the vegetables and barley. Your father says a brief, grace religious observancement is important to many working-class families, despite the Church of England's general alliance with the upper classes. Methodism and other nonconformist denominations often have stronger working-class followings, their emphasis on personal salvation and moral fortitude, resonating with those whose lives offer few material rewards. The meal is consumed quickly, hunger overriding any desire for prolonged eating. Conversation is minimal. Everyone is too tired for unnecessary words. Your father mentions a rumor about potential layoffs at the mill. Your mother speaks of rising coal prices. These are the constant anxieties of working-class life, the precariousness of employment, the fluctuating costs of necessities, the razor-thin margin between survival and destitution. After the meal, there's a brief period of relative leisure before bed. Your father smokes his pipe, tobacco bangani of the few affordable pleasures available to working men. Your mother mends clothing by the light of a single candle, her eyes straining to see the tiny stitches. The younger children play quietly with simple toys, a cup and ball, a set of jacks, a rag doll lovingly made from scraps. You rest your head against the wall, allowing your eyes to close for a moment. Every muscle in your body throbs with a dull ache that never fully subsides. Tomorrow will bring the same work, the same exhaustion, and the day after that, and the day after that. Yet within this grinding routine, there are small mercies. Tomorrow is Saturday, only a half day at the mill. The afternoon will be your own, one of the few times in the week when you can experience something like freedom. Perhaps you'll walk in the park if the weather permits. Perhaps you'll spend a precious penny on some small entertainment. These brief respites from labor are what make the working week bearable. They are jealously guarded, fiercely anticipated. They remind you that you are more than just a component in the industrial machine. You are a human being with desires, curiosities, and the capacity for joy. As darkness falls completely outside, the family prepares for bed. There will be no reading, no games, no extended conversations. Candles are too expensive to burn for non-essential purposes. Sleep is the only affordable luxury for the Victorian working class, though even this is compromised by overcrowding, poor bedding, and the physical pains of industrial labor. You climb the narrow stairs to the bedroom you share with your siblings, your body moving with the automatic motions of extreme fatigue. Tomorrow will come all too soon, the factory bell calling you back to the looms before. But for now there is the blessed relief of horizontal rest, the temporary escape of sleep. As you settle onto the lumpy mattress, already growing warm from your siblings' bodies, you stare up at the cracked ceiling. Through a small gap in the curtain, you can see a single star in the narrow slice of visible sky. It shines with surprising brightness through Manchester's perpetual haze of coal smoke. In that moment, despite everything, there is a flicker of something like hope, not the hope of dramatic change or social mobility. Those are fantasies for penny dreadfuls and sensation novels, but the modesty of continuation, of survival, of finding small joys within the constrained circumstances of your existence. This, too, is part of the Victorian working-class experience, the remarkableness of the human spirit in the face of industrial capitalism's most dehumanizing aspects. It is not romanticized poverty or noble suffering, but the complex reality of lives lived into difficult circumstances containing measures of both hardship and humanity. Saturday, half day. The words taste like freedom as you walk out of the factory gates just after noon. Your stomach growls audibly. A hollow emptiness stats becomes so familiar you barely notice it anymore. 6 hours of work with nothing but a slice of bread since dawn. What has left you laden with hunger? The midday dinner break for factory workers is the most substantial meal of the day, one they can afford it. For many, it's also the most social. Workers spill out onto the streets, heading to cook shops, street vendors, or home if they live close enough to the factory. You've kept back a penny from your wages for today's dinner, a rare extravagance, but Saturday half day is your weekly reward. The street market, just 2 blocks from the mill, has vendors selling ready-made food that's cheap, filling, and hot. 3 qualities that make it irresistible to factory workers. The market itself is a sensory cacophony after the monotonous environment of the mill. Voices call out from every direction. Hawking wares in a music-hall sing-gong that cuts through the general den. Hot eels, penny a bowl, baked potatoes hot and floury, pea soup with bacon still steaming. The smells hit ween waves, sweet, savory, pungent, smoky, each competing for attention after the thecaton-filled air of the factory. These aromas feel almost solid, like you could reach out and grab them. Your mouth waters involuntarily, your empty stomach clenching in anticipation. Unlike the markets that serve the middle, and upper classes with their orderly stalls and carefully arranged produce. Cotton famine of the 1860s, when many textile workers faced starvation due to mill closures. Observers noted with surprise that many families continued to purchase tea even while cutting back on bread and potatoes. This isn't mere addiction or misplaced priorities. Tea provides psychological comfort in difficult circumstances. It offers warmth when coal is too expensive to heat homes adequately. Most importantly, it makes poor quality food more palatable and provides the illusion of fullness when actual food is scarce. Tea with sugar also provides quick release and energy for those engaged in physical labor. You continue past the tea shop. The aroma is tempting. Home is your destination where your mother will have prepared something for the familiar midday meal. Saturday is often the best meal of the week, coming right after Friday's payday when the household budget is at its most generous. The streets grow more familiar as you near your neighborhood. You pass the local baker's shop, now selling day-old bread at reduced prices. The smell of yeast and flour hangs in the air. Bread remains the single most important food item for most Victorian families, particularly in the south of England. Of the average working-class family might consume 50–60 pounds of bread weekly, an almost unimaginable amount by modern standards. A typical adult male might eat a pound or more daily, children somewhat less, but still far more than we would consider normal today. This bread differs significantly from modern commercial loaves. It's denser, chewier, and more substantial. What food historians call a standing crust bread that provides genuine sati for the poorest. It's often made with seconds flour that contains more of the bran and germ than white flour, making it more nutritious if less socially prestigious. Bread adulteration is a serious concern throughout the Victorian period. Unscrupulous bakers add chalk, alum, aminal, salt, bone meal, or even plaster of Paris to stretch their flour. These additions can cause serious digestive issues and contribute to malnutrition by inhibiting nutrient absorption. The working poor, unable to afford bread from reputable bakers, suffer the worst effects of these practices. You turn down your street, the familiar sights and smells signaling home, then narrow rows amid a variety of cooking odor. Boiling cabbage, simmering bones for stock, onions frying and dripping. Each family stretches their meager food supplies with similar techniques, creating filling, if monotonous meals from the cheapest available ingredients. Entering your home, you find your mother at the small cast iron range, stirring a pot of something that fills the room with a savory aroma. Saturday's dinner is potato and onion soup with a ham bone providing flavor. The bone itself is a luxury purchased from the butcher for a few pence. It will be boiled repeatedly until every possible bit of nutrition has been extracted. Then the remaining marrow scraped out and spread on bread as a rare treat for the youngest children. There you are, your mother says, glancing up from her work. Just in time, it's nearly ready. You show her the apples and she smiles, a rare expression, her careworn face. We'll have those for tea, sliced thin with a bit of sugar if there's any left. The ability to provide even small luxuries for her children is a source of pride and joy. A tiny victory against the grinding pressures of poverty. The soup is served in mismatched bowls, all the family ounce, with a slice of bread for each person. It's hot, flavorful from the long simmering of the ham bone and relatively nutritious by working-class standards. The potatoes provide bulk and energy, the onions add flavor and some vitamins, and the ham bone contributes protein and minerals through its marrow, the small bits of meat that cling to it. Your father isn't present. He's working a full day at the mill as the adult male wage is essential to the family's survival. He'll eat when he returns this evening. His portion kept warm at the back of the range. The cultural expectation that men receive largest and best portions reflects both their typically heavier physicality and the patriarchal structure of Victorian society. As you eat, your younger siblings chatter about their morning at the dame school. Education for working class held is still patchy in this period, though improving with the passage of various education acts. Many children attend school only until they're old enough to work, their education constantly interrupted by domestic responsibilities or the need to contribute to family income through casual labor. The meal is consumed quickly. Hunger makes lingering unnecessary and there are afternoon chores to complete. Saturday, half-day isn't truly free time for most working-class families. It's when essential household tasks are performed. Laundry, mending, cleaning, food shopping for the week ahead. Every family member old enough to help has assigned duties. Yours is to fetch clean water from the street pump for the week's washing. You'll make multiple trips with buckets filling the large copper tub that your mother uses for laundry. The water must then be heated on the range at a mechanisming process that fills the small house with steam and moisture. The damp exacerbates your father's cough, but cannot be avoided. Clean clothing is a matter of both health and social respectability. As you prepare to begin your chores, you slip one of the apples into your pocket. You'll eat it later, savoring each bite of the tart, slightly mealy fruit that presents a rare treat in your monotonous diet. Small pleasures like this punctuate the hardships of working-class life, providing momentary respite and something to look forward to in days otherwise defined by labor and necessity. The afternoon stretches ahead. filled with domestic work rather than factory labor, but work nonetheless. Sunday will bring its own rituals. Church attendance for many families, regardless of their material poverty, followed by the week's largest and most substantial meal if they can afford it. Then Monday returns with its pre-dawn rising and the factory bell, summoning workers back to their stations. This is the rhythm of working-class Victorian life. Endless labor interspersed with brief periods of relative leisure. Constant material deprivation occasionally relieved by small indulgences. Physical hardship ended with remarkable resilience. It is not a romantic existence by any measure, but it is one that millions of ordinary people navigated with dignity, finding moments of community and even joy within severely constrained scans. You lift the empty water buckets. Their weight nothing compared to what they'll be when filled. The street pump is 3 blocks away, meaning each round trip takes about 15 minutes, and you'll need to make at least 6 journeys to fill the wash tub. Your arms will ache by the end, but the work is necessary, and complaining serves no purpose. As you step outside, the weak winter sun breaks commentary through Manchester's perpetual cloud of cold smoke, casting long shadows across the narrow street. The light catches the condensation on the windows of neighboring houses, creating brief rainbows that shimmer and fade as you watch. Beauty exists even here in this industrial landscape of brick and smoke. It's fleeting, easily overlooked, but present nonetheless, like the small moments of satisfaction and connection that make bearable the harsh realities of working-class Victorian life. Evening settles over the rows of terrace houses, shadows across narrow streets. Your arms ache from carrying water, but the laundry is finally done. Sheets and work clothes hanging on lines strung across the small kitchen, creating a damp canopy that will take hours to dry in the winter air. The house smells of wet wool and the carbolic soap your mother uses for washing, a harsh chemical scent that never quite leaves fabrics or her cracked, reddened hands. Saturday evening brings a rare moment of collective exhale for working-class neighborhoods. The week's labor is mostly complete. Sunday's church attendance is still hours away. This brief window between work and worship creates space for something almost resembling leisure, though foremost. True idleness remains an unaffordable luxury. Your father arrives home from his extended shift, his shoulders stooped with fatigue, coal dust embedded in the lines of his face. After eating his portion of the now tepid soup, he reaches into his pocket and places 3 coins on the table, a shilling and 2 penny. This is the family's entertainment allowance for the week. The small sum set aside from his wage, after rent, food, and necessities are accounted for. It's a ritual repeated in working-class homes across Britain each Saturday. This careful allocation of a few precious coins for recreation. For many families, the entire amount goes too far for his Saturday night at the public house. In more temperate households like yours, it's divided. Some for father, some for mother, perhaps a penny. For older children, all carefully apportioned according to family custom and immediate needs. I thought we might go out for a bit, your father says, the rare suggestion brightening the dimly lit room. The Sheridans have their boy back from the Navy. They'll be singing. At the Fox and Hound, your mother looks up from her mending, weighing the proposal against the endless household tasks that always need attention. But even she recognizes the value of occasional sociability just for an hour. Then, she concedes, the little ones can come too. They should see James in his uniform before he ships out again. This casual suggestion, a family outing to the local pub, encapsulates a fundamental aspect of working-class Victorian social life. The public house wasn't merely a place for drinking, it was the community's living room, a rare space where working people cowled, gather in relative comfort and warmth without the surveillance of employers or the moral scrutiny of middle-class reformers. Unlike your cramped home with its damp chill, the pub offers warmth, light, and companionship for the price of a pint of beer, typically 2 pence. A working man could occupy a seat by the fire for hours, meet friends, exchange news, and momentarily escape the grinding pressures of industrial life. For many, it's the only space where they're treated with a measure of dignity rather than as mere components in the industrial machine. The family walks together through streets now alive with Saturday event activity. Women call to each other from doorways, exchanging neighborhood news. Children play in the gutters, inventing games with discarded items, a broken hoop, a length of string, a collection of pebbles. Men gather on corners, smoking pipes, and discussing the week's events at the factory or mine. That community exists in these shared spaces between the cramped private dwellings. The street itself functions as an extension of the home, a area where relationships are maintained, information exchanged, and social bonds reinforced. This is particularly true in summer when entire families might sit outside their doors well into the evening, escaping the stifling heat of overcrowded interiors. The Fox and Hound stands at the corner off to streets, its windows glowing with gaslight, the sounds of conversation and occasional laughter spilling onto the pavement. It's a modest establishment, no etched glass or polished brass like the grander city center establishment that cater to clerks and shopkeepers. This is a working man's pub, its interior plain but clean, its price set to factory wages. Inside, the warmth hits you first, a wall of heat from the coal fire burning in the grate, then the smell: beer, tobacco, smoke, wet wool from damp coats, the faint undertone of sweat from bodies crowded together after a week of physical labor. The air is thick enough to cut, but after the chill outside it feels like a blanket wrapping around you. The main room is already crowded. Wooden benches and tables occupied by neighborhood families. Unlike middle-class establishments, working-class pubs often welcomed women and even children, particularly on Saturday evenings when they functioned more as community centers than mere drinking establishments. Some reformers objected to this family atmosphere, believing it normalized alcohol consumption for impressionable youth. But for working people with few other gathering spaces, the inclusive nature of the local pub was essential to community cohesion. James Sheridan sits by the fire, in his navy uniform, the blue fabric and brass buttons exotic against the drab colors of factory attire. At 19, he's already been to distant parts of the empire, Hong Kong, Jamaica, Cape Town, bringing back tales that transport his listeners far beyond their limited horizons. Here's the neighborhood's window to the wider world. His story is consumed as eagerly as any printed adventure. Your father buys a pint of beer for himself and a half for your mother. For you and your siblings, there's ginger beer, a mildly alcoholic beverage considered suitable for children in moderation. The total cost is 4 pence, a significant expenditure from the entertainment budget, but justified by the special occasion. As the evening progresses, impromptu entertainment begins. Someone plays a concertina, a small handheld instrument similar to an accordion that's popular among working people for its portability and relatively low cost. Others join in singing folk songs, sea shanties, music hall tunes that everyone knows. No formal performance, just the organic expression of a community's shared cultural vocabulary. This casual music-making represents one of the most accessible forms of entertainment for the Victorian working class. It requires no admission fee, no special venue, just willing participants and perhaps a simple instrument or two before recorded music. This kind of participatory performance was how most people experienced music, not as passive consumers but as active contributors, regardless of formal training or natural ability. For those who desired more elaborate entertainment, Victorian cities offered a range of options stratified by cost and social respect. At the bottom of the hierarchy were penny gaffs, makeshift theaters and converted shops or cellars where for a single penny audiences could watch crude comedies, melodramas or variety acts. These establishments, often raided by police for license violations, catered to the poorest workers and their children, offering brief escape from harsh realities through exaggerated performance and ribald humor. A step above were the music halls, which by the 1850s had evolved from back rooms and pubs to purpose-built venues, seating hundreds or even thousands. For 3 pints to a shilling, patrons could enjoy hours of variety entertainment. Singers, comedians, acrobats, animal acts, and novelty performances, beer and food were served throughout, creating an atmosphere far removed from the restrained propriety of legitimate theatre. The music hall was perhaps the most democratic of Victorian entertainment spaces, drawing audiences from across working and lower middle classes. Its songs and comedic routines often addressed the actual conditions of working-class life with a directness absent from more refined forms of culture. Performers like Marie Lloyd became genuine celebrities among ordinary people, their and songs entering the common vernacular. For those who couldn't afford even Thesmodist admission prices, street entertainment remained an option. Punch and Judy shows, organ grinders, often with performing monkeys, ballad singers, and acrobats performed in public spaces, collecting pennies from appreciative spectators. In London's East End, street performers might earn more on a good Saturday than a factory worker made in 2 days of labor. Back in the Fox and Hound, James Sheridan has been persuaded to sing a Navy song, his clear tenor voice cutting through the smoky air. The room grows momentarily quieter, conversation spurs as neighbors listen. It's a bawdy tune, though rendered innocent enough for mixed company, and the chorus invites participation. Soon the whole pub joins in, creating a moment of collective joy that transcends individual hardships. Your younger siblings, initially shy in the unfamiliar environment, have relaxed enough to play with other neighborhood children in the corner of the room. A game of marbles has been organized on the relatively clean floorboards, the-colored glass spheres rolling between obstacles made of discarded cork stoppers. The publican tolerates these juvenile activities on Saturday evenings, recognizing that family customers, good for business. This tolerance represents another key aspect of working-class leisure, its integration across age groups. Unlike middle-class Victorian childhood, increasingly segregated into specialized spaces and activities, working-class had participated in adult environments from an early age. Their play occupied the same physical and social spaces as adult recreation, creating both greater independence and earlier socialization into community norms. Your father engages in conversation with other mill workers, their discussion turning to the rumored layoffs mentioned at dinner. Information exchange is another crucial function of the publicus, allowing workers to share intelligence about working conditions, wage rates, and employment opportunities across different establishments. Before widespread literacy and affordable, this oral network was often the primary source of practical information for working people. Cartwright's is taking on spinners next week offers one man, a valuable tip for anyone facing unemployment. Foreman's My Wife's Cousin put in a word for any of you if needed. This casual offer exemplifies mutual aid networks that sustained work communities through economic hardship without formal safety nets. Working people relied on reciprocal relationships of support, job referrals, small loans, childcare assistance, shared resources during illness or unemployment. These networks, often centered around neighborhood, workplace, or kinship connections, provided crucial resilience in an economic system characterized by extreme precarity. More formalized versions of this mutual support existed in friendly societies and trade unions, which by mid-century enrolled millions of working-class members for a weekly contribution of a few pence. These organizations provided sickness benefits, funeral expenses, and sometimes unemployment assistance to members, creating a rudimentary welfare system long before state provision. The financial discipline required for such contributions was significant given workers' limited resources, but the security they provided was valued enough to justify the sacrifice. Many working-class families prioritized friendly society dues even when struggling to afford adequate food, recognizing that illness or death without such protection could push a marginally stable household into complete destitution. As the evening advances, the pub grows more crowded and rowdier. Your mother catches your father's eye, the silent communication of long-married couples indicating it's time to take the younger children home. Your father nods, finishing his second pint before gathering the family. Outside, the night air feels shockingly cold after the pub's warmth. The streets have quieted somewhat though, light and noise still spill from public houses and the occasional coffee shop. These latter establishments, often run by temperance advocates as alternatives to alcohol-serving venues, offer tea, coffee, and simple food in respectable environments, usually closing earlier than pubs. The temperance movement represents one of many middle-class reform efforts targeting working-class leisure during the Victorian period, concerned about the moral and economic effects of alcohol consumption. Organizations like the Band of Hope promoted total abstinence, particularly focusing on recruiting children to the cause. By 1900, millions of working-class children had signed temperance pledges, creating generation tension in families where alcohol remained central to adult sociability. This attempt to reshape working-class culture reveals the class dynamics underlying Victorian leisure. Middle-class reformers viewing working-class recreation through their own moral lens often sought to replace rough entertainments with rational tinnitus. Public libraries, museums, illustrated lectures. While some workers embraced these opportunities for self-improvement, many resisted what they perceived as condescending attempts to control their limited free time. Your family returns home, the younger children yawning despite the relatively early hour. Physical fatigue from a week of work or school combined with poor nutrition and the chronically inadequate sleep common in overcrowded housing meant that even leisure activities could quickly exhaust working-class bodies. The house feels particularly cold after the pub's warmth. Your father builds up the fire one last time using precious coal from the diminishing supply in the outhouse. Heat, like food, is carefully rationed in working-class homes, each shovelful of coal representing a significant expense in the weekly budget, while your mother puts the younger children to bed, all sharing a single room with barely enough floor space between beds to stand. You and your brother are permitted to stay up a little longer. At 14 and 12, you occupy an intermediate space between childhood and adulthood, gradually assuming more adult responsibilities while still occasionally enjoying children's privileges by the fire's dim light. Your father takes out the weekly newspaper purchased earlier that day, one of the new penny papers that made print media affordable to working people for the first time. Often such papers would be shared between multiple families, or read aloud in pubs to maximize value and to commit at varying literacy levels. The growth of working-class literacy through the Victorian period from under 50% at Victoria's accession to near universal by her death created an expanding market for affordable penny dreadfuls, serialized adventure stories, political papers, family magazines, and cheap editions of novels, all found eager audiences among workers hungry for entertainment and information despite limited education. Your father reads aloud selected articles, news of a mine disaster in Wales, reports from the ongoing conflicts at the empire's edges, a local story about municipal improvements. Then newspaper connects your small corner of Manchester to the wider world, contextualizing individual experience within larger social and political frameworks. This modest scene, a family gathered around a single newspaper, extracting maximum value from a penny publication, exemplifies the resourcefulness with which working-class Victorians approach. With severely constrained resources, they nevertheless created meaningful recreational experience, adapting middle-class cultural forms to their own economic circumstances and social priorities. As the fire dies down, conversation dwindles, the physical toll of the working week asserts itself in itching mescals and heavy eyelids. Your father folds the newspaper carefully, It will in drawers or be used for kindling once everyone has read it and gestures toward bed. Upstairs, the small bedroom you share with siblings is cold enough to see your breath. The sheets feel damp against your skin as you slide beneath, your body heat gradually creating a small pocket of warmth in the otherwise frigid bed. Outside, the last pubgoers make their way home, their voices carrying clearly through thin walls and poorly fitted windows. Sleep comes quickly, despite the discomfort your body surrendering Tokes Houston after a week of labor in today's domestic exertions. Tomorrow brings Sunday, church in the morning for many families, regardless of weather or weariness, followed by the week's most substantial meal. If finances permit, then the brief respite ends, and Monday returns with its pre-dawn rising, and the factory bells summons. This is the rhythm of working-class Victorian life. 6 days of labor punctuated by brief periods of communal recreation, physical hardship occasionally relieved by simple pleasures, material deprivation endured within networks of mutual support. It is not a romantic existence by any measure, but it is one that millions of ordinary people navigated with remarkable resilience, finding meaning in moments of joy within severely constrained circumstances. As you drift towards sleep, the sounds of the neighborhood fade. The weight of the blankets in siblings' bodies creates a cocoon of relative comfort within the broader discomfort of working-class existence. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges and small consolations. For now, there is the blessed relief of rest, the temporary escape of sleep after a day that contained alongside hardships, genuine moments of community and connection. Sunday night unfolds across the cramped bedroom, darkness settling into corners where the single candle's light cannot reach. Tomorrow brings another week of labor, another 6 days of dawn to dusk toil, but for now, there is this moment of relative stillness, this brief interval between one week's end and another's beginning. Sleep in Victorian working-class homes bears little resemblance to our modern experience. There are no individual bedrooms, no private spaces for rest and reflection. Instead, family members sleep in shared beds, bodies pressed together for warmth and by necessity. A household of 8 might have only 2 beds total, with parents and youngest children in one, older siblings in usually on your side, the position determined by practicality rather than preference. For children, in a bed designed for 2 means sleeping top and tail, 2 heads at one end, 2 at the other, and always on your side. To minimize the space each body occupies, movement during sleep is severely constrained. Turn too vigorously, and you might push a sibling onto the cold floor. The mattress beneath you is stuffed with straw, perhaps with a thin layer of horsehair on top. If your family is marginally better off, it rustles with every slight movement. Federated plant material gradually breaking down into dust that irritates nose and lungs. Unlike modern mattresses designed for support and comfort, these are merely marginally softer platforms that bare floor, offering minimal cushioning for bodies already aching from labor. Bedding consists of heavy blankets, often pieced together from worn clothing or other textile scraps. The weight provides warmth but little softness. Sheets, when present, are coarse cotton or rough linen, infrequently washed due to the labor involved in laundry. In the coldest winter months, it's not uncommon to sleep partially clothed, perhaps removing only outer garments while keeping on nightshirts, stockings, even caps to preserve precious body heat. The room itself offers minimal protection from the elements. Thin walls transmit sounds from neighboring houses, a baby crying, a couple arguing, someone coughing with the deep racking sound of textile workers' lung. Ill-fitting windows allow drafts that make the candle flame gutter and send occasional shivers through your huddled form. In summer, these same windows admit fetidor from inadequate sewage systems and the general miasma of industrial cities. Sleep itself comes in different patterns than our modern 8-hour block. Historic research suggests that pre-industrial sleep often occurred in 2 phases. First, sleep from roughly dusk until midnight, followed by a wakeful interval of an hour or so, then second, sleep until dawn. This biphasic pattern gradually disappeared with industrialization and artificial lighting, but vestiges remained in Victorian working class sleep habits. Your father might rise in that midnight interval to smoke a pipe by the dying kitchen fire, enjoying a rare moment of solace. Your mother might use the time for mending that requires better light than is available during the evening when the kitchen is crowded with family. These quiet, nocturnal hours provided a kind of privacy otherwise unobtainable in overcrowded housing. As you drift between wakefulness and sleep, your mind wanders through the events of the day, the prospects of tomorrow. Dreams for Victorian working-class children rarely include dramatic social mobility. The exceptional cases, the worker's son, Hob became a shopkeeper, the factory girl who married above her station, were celebrated precisely because of their rarity. Most envisioned futures only marginally better than their present. Steady work, a slightly larger home, perhaps 1 or 2 cherished possessions. Yet within these constrained horizons, aspirations still existed. Parents sacrificed to provide children with basic education, hoping literacy might lead to clerical rather than manual labor. Families saved pennies toward joining friendly societies that provided security against illness or death. Young people delayed marriage until they could establish marginally better households than those they grew up in. These modest ambitions reflected not a lack of imagination, but a clear-eyed assessment of the limited opportunities available within the rigid class structure of Victorian Britain. The truly poor understood that survival itself required tremendous effort, improvement, however incremental, represented genuine achievement under such constraints. Outside the city gradually quiets. Sunday evening brings a hush not present on other nights, a combination of religious observance, exhaustion from the week past, and preparation for the week ahead. Even the pubs close earlier on Sundays, their patrons dispersing to homes where Monday's workload have been laid out. Monday's breakfast preparations made as far as possible. In wealthier neighborhoods, gas streetlights cast pools of yellow illumination along empty pavements, but in working-class areas, such lighting remained sporadic. Even in the 1850s, darkness reclaims the narrow streets broken only by occasional lanterns by night watchmen or late-returning workers. This darkness harbors both danger, opportunistic thieves, drunken brawlers, and small freedoms from daytime surveillance. Within this darkness, parallel social worlds exist. While your family sleeps in preparation for early factory shifts, the urban night accommodates other populations. Sex workers solicit clients in certain districts. Police constables patrol their beats with measured tread. Night-soiled men, the workers who collect human waste from cesspits and privies, perform their essential but stigmatized labor. Bakers prepare dough for morning bread. Markets receive early deliveries of produce from surrounding farms. This nocturnal economy ensures that the industrial city functions through all hours, its human components working in shifts like parts of a vast machine. The factory system may dominate daytime labor, but night work, often more dangerous and worse paid, keeps the urban infrastructure operational around the clock. In your narrow bed, sleep comes in fits and starts. The unfamiliar presence of all family members, father home from the pub, mother not engaged in household tasks, creates a different energy than weeknights. Your brother's elbow digs into your ribs with each breath. Your younger sister murmurs in her sleep beside you. The cold air forms small clouds with each exhale, yet there is security in this proximity. This shared experience of rest, the family unit for all its internal tensions and power dynamics, provides the primary buffer against the harshest aspects of industrial capitalism. Within its boundaries, resources are pooled, care is exchanged, identities are formed. For working-class Victorians, family represents both constraint, additional mouths to feed, bodies to clothe, and protection against complete vulnerability to market forces. Sleep deepens as the night advances, your consciousness gradually surrendering to exhaustion. The body's need for recovery overrides discomfort. Dreams come fragmentary, often incorporating sensory elements from your immediate environment. The weight of blankets becomes a machine pressing down. Your brother's snoring transforms into factory sounds. The cold draft against your face becomes the winter wind on your walk to work. Dawn arrives too soon, gray light seeping through the thin curtain. Monday begins as all workdays do, with the struggle between physical necessity and bodily resistance. The warm cocoon of shared body heat makes leaving bed particularly difficult in winter months. But necessity prevails, as it must. The factory bell waits for no one. This cycles 6 days of labor, one of relative rest, then labor again. Structures Victorian life with a monotony that can seem crushing from our modern perspective. Yet within this apparently rigid framework, gradual change does occur both in individual lives and in broader social conditions. By mid-century reform movements have begun to ameliorate some of the worst aspects of industrial labor. The 10 Hours Act of 1847 limits women's and children's working hours in factories to 10 hours daily. The Factory Acts of 1850 and 1853 established the Saturday half-holiday, creating space for working-class clear inspection systems, though understaffed, provide some enforcement of safety and age regulations. These legislative changes reflect broader shifts in social attitudes toward labor, and particularly the Romantic poet's idealization of childhood, evangelical Christians' moral concerns, medical professionals' health warnings, and working-class activists organizing all contribute to a reformist consensus that gradually improves conditions, though outweighs against resistance from industrial interests. Public health reforms similarly to transform urban environments, albeit slowly and unevenly. The Public Health Act of 1848 establishes local boards of health with powers to create sewage systems, regulate water supplies, and remove public nuisances like accumulation. Edwin Chadwick's Sanitaria reports link disease to environmental conditions rather than moral failings, providing scientific justification for infrastructure improvements. These changes don't transform working-class life overnight. Implementation is patchy, often prioritizing middle-class districts. Funding constraints limit ambition. Ideological commitment to minimal government intervention hampers enforcement. But by the 1870s and 1880s, many industrial cities have functioning sewage systems, regulated water supplies, and at least rudimentary street cleaning services. Developments that measurably reduce mortality rates. Housing reform progresses more slowly. The first model dwellings company established in the 1840s construct better quality housing for deserving workers but reach only a tiny fraction of the population. Local authorities gain limited powers to clear slums through various artisans and labor dwellings acts, though displacement often creates new problems. Not until the 1890s do local governments begin directly building public housing, and even then at modest scale. Education represents perhaps the most significant area of social improvement. The 1870 Education Act establishes local school boards empowered to build schools where a voluntary provision is inadequate. The 1880 Act makes elementary education compulsory until age 10. The 1891 Act makes it largely free. By century's end, basic literacy is nearly universal among young working-class people, a dramatic change from mid-century when perhaps half the population could neither read nor write. These reforms, implemented across decades rather than years, gradually transform the texture of working-class life. A child born into a factory worker's family in 1840 might leave school at 8 to work 12-hour days in completely unregulated conditions. That same worker's grandchild, born in 1880, might remain in school until 12, work shorter regulated hours in somewhat safer conditions, live in marginally better housing with improved sanitation, and possess literacy skills, opening different employment possibilities. Progress is real but incremental. Class divisions remain profound. Economocracy continues, yet the cumulative effect of these changes won through complex interactions between working-class activism, middle-class reformism, and eventually electoral politics creates meaningful improvements in material conditions and life chances. Your own life spans this period of gradual transformation. Born in the 1830s, you enter the factory system bare. Significant regulations exist. By your 30s, in the 1860s, you've witnessed the implementation of hours limitations, safety requirements, and the beginning of compulsory education for your youngest siblings, or perhaps your own children. By your 60s, should user of the physical toll of industrial labor, you'll see the emergence of old age pensions, further housing improvements, and the first stirrings of the welfare state. This long view provides context for the daily hardships depicted throughout our narrative. The Victorian working class existed within a period of transition from the brutally unregulated capitalism of the early Industrial Revolution toward the more managed capitalism of the 20th century. Their lives encompassed both tremendous varying and the seeds of substantive improvement. Understanding this context helps avoid both romanticizing working-class Victorian life and dismissing it as uniformly bleak. The reality contained both grinding, hardship, and human resilience, both structural oppression and meaningful agency. Workers were neither passive victims nor consistently heroic resistors, but people navigating complex circumstances with the resources available to them. As historical subjects, they deserve neither pity nor idealization, but recognition of their full humanity, their suffering and joy, their constraints and creativity, their participation in both maintaining and transforming the society they inhabited. Their experiences, seemingly distant from our own, contain elements that remain deeply relevant to contemporary questions of labor, housing, education, and social welfare. In your bed now, drifting towards sleep and comfort unknown to the Victorian working class, consider what their lives illuminate about our own. How do we balance work and rest? How do we create meaning within economic constraints? How do communities support individual survival? How do incremental reforms relate to more fundamental social transformation? The worlds we've explored, the factory floor with its relentless machinery, the crowded home with its calculated economies, the pub with its momentary warmth, the shared bed with its intimate comforts, offer perspectives on these enduring questions. The Victorians' wars differed from ours by necessity, but the questions themselves persist. Sleep now comes easily to you in your room with its regulated temperature, your bed with its engineered support, your home with its sanitary infrastructure, all innovations that would seem miraculous to our Victorians. As your consciousness fades, remember that your comfort rests partly on their struggles, their labor, their gradual acquisition of rights and protections we now take for granted. The darkness deepens outside your window, so different from the smoky darkness of industrial Manchester. Thistleance wraps around you, unmarred by factory sounds or neighbors' proximity. Your body relaxes completely free from the aches of physical labor and the tension of economic precarity. Your breath slows regular and easy in lungs never exposed to cotton dust or cold. This distance between their sleep and yours, their lives and yours, is measured not just in years, but in transformations of experience so profound they can be difficult to fully comprehend. Yet beneath these differences lies a shared humanity, a continuity of basic needs and desires spanning the generations that separate you from those ordinary Victorians whose daily existence we've briefly inhabited. Their world has passed, but elements of it persist, in the physical infrastructure of our cities, in the social institutions they helped create, in the ongoing negotiations between capital and labor, in the persistent questions of how societies should balance individual liberty and collective welfare. We are not them, but neither are we entirely separate from them. Their struggles echo in our present. Their achievements underpin our lives. As sleep claims you completely, let your last waking thought be appreciation for the distance traveled from their world to ours, for the efforts that made that journey possible, for the ordinary people whose names history rarely records, but whose collective experience shapes the world inherit. And with that, close your eyes and drift off to sleep. Thanks.